Welcome to the Fit for Halter podcast. I'm your host, Amy Zabel, and we're here to bring content and community to the amateur halter exhibitor. Join me in welcoming Joe Holman, owner of Holman Halter Horses. Our focus this evening is on conditioning and prepping our halter horses. So thanks, Joe, for being with us.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me. Should have been about 3 or 4 podcasts earlier, but I made it anyhow.
We got to enjoy your wife on our previous episode, so thanks for sharing her with us. So we knew that we had to get the other half of Holman Halter Horses here. So thanks for your time. Why don't you kick off in telling us about your background in the horse industry?
Oh, in the horse industry, I was introduced to the industry a number of years ago, like in the actual show industry, by a gentleman named Kevin Hardcastle. Been a lifelong family friend. Used to be neighbors with my mother growing up. They went to high school together. So a lifelong family friend. He introduced me to the shows. Used to help out with the paint shows over at the Holiday Classic. If anybody ever attended that show back in the day in Oklahoma City, it kind of lapsed after Christmas and then over into the New Year's. And he kind of got me into the show side of things, and I haven't looked back since.
We are better for it. So what draws you to the halter horse specifically?
Well, the halter horse specifically, I mean, I like a pretty horse. I like a horse that's got a lot of class, charisma, something that just takes your breath away when you look at them. You say, oh, wow, like, look at that horse. That's really kind of what got me drawn to the halter horse and the halter horse industry, is just the interest. And I was very intrigued on, man, how they look like that and how these professionals got them to look like that. And that's really what just drew me to that side of things.
Mm-hmm. So out of all the accomplishments and awards that you've received, what are the ones that you're most proud of?
Wow. I know that there's been horsemen and women out there that have won so much more than me. The people that have come before me in this industry. I'm proud of every award. Proud of every title that we've come across, that we've been blessed to have earned. It's taken a lot of hard work and dedication, and it's also, God's on our side on this, and we do it all for the glory of Him. So, if I had to pick one specific one, it would have been when I won the open world with a horse named MMR Jinx on me. He was kind of my boy. Kind of found him, diamond in the rough. My rags to riches kind of story. He wasn't a show horse prior to us finding him, and kind of brought him up, and he was a great show horse, and I'm really proud to have won with him and had the honor to have him in the barn, own him, and show him.
Yeah. Awesome. You mentioned the kind of the it factor that attracts you to the halter horse. When you are, whether it's looking online or you're at a show looking at other horses, how do you determine one particular horse's suitability for the halter pen and its ability to succeed?
That's a good question. Me personally, like I said earlier, I like a horse that's real pretty. I like to look at a horse in person and, just they kind of take your breath away when you find the one. But structurally looking at a horse and figuring out if they're going to be able to take the push and take the workload, and hauling the horse up and down the road is stress enough on their bodies as well. So you've got to start with confirmation number one. But in that, when I'm looking for a prospect or looking at a horse for a customer that may even be not a baby but something older, balance is number one that you want to look for in a horse. You want them to be equal in three parts, their front, their middle, and their back, and the hind end area. You want to look for good structurally correct legs, straight legs, good foot. Make sure they've got enough bone to them, enough foot to them to where they can hold up in the long run. Nice, pretty neck, tying high and out of the shoulder. Short coupled back, long crouped. Those are just a few of the things that I look for when I'm looking at a horse to say, yeah, this horse has some good parts to the horse that in the long run will help with soundness and with longevity in the show pen.
When you think of longevity, what's the span of time that you are considering?
Well, there's some great ones out there. Horses are horses. They're gonna get themselves in trouble any way they can find trouble. And you have horses that just get sick and things like that, and things happen. But longevity, I'd like to show a horse as long as possible. We were just up at the WCHA Supreme Championship show and got to see one of the greats, a world-class Storm, which if you're listening to this and you don't know the horse, just look him up. I don't know how long he's been or how many world titles he's won at this point. But I know that he's 13 years old and he looks like he's about 5. That's what we all strive to have. Longevity in the show pen is someone like Wyatt. Sometimes you'll have a horse that's really good as a baby, and then they go through that really weird growthy kind of teenage weird years as a yearling, and they're just not going to look good. So you may take that yearling year off, and they may make a better 2 or 3 year old horse, or even an aged horse. Longevity in the show pen, and I'd love to show them till they're 6, 7, 8, and until you kind of figure, well, it's either time to make a baby or maybe a youth kid takes over this gilding or something like that. Mm-hmm. So longevity, as long as we can possibly take them down the road. I have a 9-year-old mare in the barn right now that we're going to be taking down the road this year. So,
yeah, it's helpful, I think, to help bring clarity to thoughts or comments about horses that don't really have a future beyond yearling or 2-year-old years. So that's really helpful.
Well, I think that's in any industry.
Sure.
I think that's in any industry. I think I agree with you. I hear the comments. I get the comments on our social media all the time. I think that if you go to any barn that performs or competes at the top of the game, you're gonna have horses that are gonna have a little bit lower longevity from time to time, and that's in any discipline. If you go to a WCHA Halter for Charity and you look at the junior weanling fillies class, and there's, let's say, 50 of them in there, how many of those 50 are going to make it to the long term into an aged mare? Not a whole lot of them. But if you go to let's say the NRHA Derby, the reining horses. How many 2 and 3-year-old Derby horses are there? A couple hundred. How many of those make an aged show horse? Not very many. So I think it takes a special kind of horse to make it long term. But also, we're asking these horses to perform at the top of their game, and how many 50-year-old football players are out there?
Just one. Well, I think he just retired.
How many 45-year-old basketball players are there? There's, we're asking these guys to perform at the top of their game, and that doesn't mean that they can't show at a lower level, at a local level, maybe. But we're talking the top of the game. We're talking the Major League Baseballs, the NFL, the NBA. That's where we're competing at this level. And, longevity, and that's tough. There's very, very few of them that are able to do that, but that's what we strive for. We strive for a healthier, sounder horse. And I think we're getting more and more of those coming along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And that was part of our conversation with Karina, was talking about what's next. If they either don't have longevity or they're just bored or burnt out, riding is always a good option. So yeah, that's good. Yeah. So help us know, in a very specific sense, your approach to conditioning and prepping of a show horse. For example, like, talk to us about the length of your workouts or the frequency of your workouts.
Okay. Well, conditioning one, it's dependent on a number of different things. What time of year it is, how old the horse is, and what that show schedule looks like on the time that horse comes into the barn. If you, let's just say, for instance, it's January, February, I have a yearling horse that comes into the barn. Been fed right through the weanling off season and is ready to start fitting. What that would look like is, let's say our goal is the WCHA and Paint World. They're the halter million. That's our goal to get to. Where we would start on a first and foremost, we're going to worm the horse. And then we're going to start them on our feeding program and our exercise program or conditioning program. I don't know if I want to say we do it differently than other people, because I don't go around to a bunch of other barns and watch how they work horses, but we all kind of have, I would say, the same general idea. We have forced exercise for a certain amount of time, a certain amount of days a week. Some pony horses off of other horses. They have pony horses. Some use golf carts or side-by-sides or four-wheelers or whatever else. Some implement a hot walker. Some use round pen work. Some use lunge lines, whatever people have. But here at our barn, I switch it up. So I really like to study how muscles work, how muscles grow, how we can change that muscle structure. And if me or you would go to the gym, let's say starting tomorrow, and we did the same workout 5 days a week, and we never changed that, we would definitely get stronger and get better in that first week, month. But after a while, we would plateau and we would not have any more beneficial gains after that. So I think that what we do here is we change up those workouts, not so much on a weekly basis, but on an every other day. There will be days where we're on the track, ponying off the side-by-side, and then maybe the next day we're in the round pen working on just manners and getting our workout in the round pen. And then maybe the next day we're going to go do flat work in the arena, where we just pony in the arena. Now my track is flat on the bottom side and flat on the top side, but I've got a hill, not a steep hill, but a hill going down and then a hill coming up on the track. So it's a different workout. If we do the same thing over and over again, I find that we can kind of hit that plateau area and it's tough to get past that. But consistency wise, major thing is consistent. Be as consistent as you possibly can. If that's 3 days a week and that's all you consistently do, make sure you do those 3 days a week. Us here, we do 6 days a week. Sunday's their day off. That's the Lord's day. It's my day off as well. But so a typical week will be Mondays will be on the track. And depending on horses, now if we go back to that yearling horse, we'll go 10 to 12 minutes, depending on how they're looking at that moment. If they're looking a little lean, we'll go 10. If they're looking a little plump, we'll bump it up to 12 that day. And we'll go 10 to 12 minutes on the track that day. Then they'll go in their stall and they'll stand tied with their neck sweats on. And we just work through all the horses that way. And then say Tuesday, we'll go into the round pen. We have a 60-foot round pen with some really good footing, nice sand in there. And I'm not so much looking for a certain speed in that. I'm looking for a consistent gait at a trot, a long trot. I'm not pushing really hard because that sand's a little deeper than what I have on the track. But I find that it gets them to use muscles going in a circle a little bit different. Now, I don't push hard in that because circles can be tough on legs. And we definitely don't want to push that very far. And if I have a horse that's having a little issue with a leg, or they're in a really growthy stage, we don't do the round pen at all. We try to stick to as straight of lines as we possibly can to keep them from getting in those tight circles. But the workouts change here quite a bit, dependent on really what the horse looks like. I'm able to look at these horses daily, so I change workouts quite a bit on these guys. But they are working 6 days a week for sure.
About protective gear, you mentioned sweats after the workout. Do you use a sweat during the workout? Do you use bell boots or splint boots? Anything? Tell us a little bit about your routine there.
Yes, ma'am. So routine wise, the horses get fed at the same time every morning. Come out to the barn, check on everybody. It's about, I'd say 7:30 in the morning. I'm going through doing all my checks. The horses have already been fed, watered. Our barn manager, he's got all that taken care of at that point. And then I'll go through and I will start getting halters on everybody, tying them to the wall, grooming them, getting them cleaned up from their nice comfy sleeps the night before, and get all the shavings knocked off of them, hit them with a curry comb real quick, and we'll put neck sweats on. Every horse that's in the program gets neck sweats. I don't think, even if you think, man, my horse's neck is really pretty good, put a neck sweat on them. And then I use, I don't have a specific brand of splint boot or protection boot. Whatever's really on, that's a good quality, and whatever's on sale at South Texas Tech at the time. I tend to have a lot of professional choice boots, and every horse will get a pair of those. I duct tape on my horse's feet, as well as bell boots. I want to keep those. I want to try to do everything I can to make sure I've got those shoes on, because if we lose a shoe, I lose a day of work. Because I don't want to work them with one shoe on or a bent shoe on. So if I lose a shoe, I lose a day of work. So I do everything I can to keep those shoes on. So just wrap around 4 or 5 times with the duct tape and then slap a bell boot on over the top of that. And we're usually pretty good to go there. So protection wise, that's what we do, is the a protection boot or splint boot, and a bell boot with some duct tape around the foot.
That's like a pro tip. Might have to take
Pro tip:
from this.
farriers will love you. The only thing is, after you're done working out, you got to cut it off. So keep a good pair of bandage scissors around, or they will rip it off, and you'll find it in their stall.
Yeah.
And so just cut the tape off. Don't leave it on. It will make a mess of things.
Yeah. We just lost a shoe last week. The farrier was scheduled to come the next day. So that worked out
You
well
got
for
lucky
us.
that time.
We did. But that's a good tip. We've never tried
Pro
that.
tip.
So we'll have to.
Don't skimp on duct tape either. Don't skimp on it. Buy good duct tape. Don't just buy crummy duct tape, because your first time around, that duct tape's going to be tore up, and go spend some money. That's not an area that I skimp on.
Okay. Wisdom, wise words. I like that.
I don't know
So,
about that. They're just words.
well, you covered a lot in workouts, just kind of helping us think through different areas, the importance of consistency, length of workout based on age and number of variables. What about what do you do to keep the horse from getting bored? Do you find that with that variation, it keeps their mind fresh, or is there something else that you would try?
Getting bored, as in they're not really wanting to work, or
Maybe,
um
or bad
getting a little
behaviors?
cantankerous,
Yeah.
bad behaviors. Yeah, I find that mixing it up a little bit, whether it's you've got a day of lunging or a day of round pen, or instead of on this side of the ranch working on the track, we're going to this side of the ranch and we're going to go in the arena that day. I think helps to an extent. But usually it's my little bit older horses, my late twos, early threes, that you start having some boredom stuff go on. And that's usually when Karina starts throwing saddles on them and kind of takes them away from me a little bit. And then they kind of really enjoy coming back to just going for 10, 15 minutes around the track.
She said that exact thing.
Yeah. Boredom in the stall. I don't find that they get bored when they're getting worked. I think that you just start getting like you said, a little ill-mannered, I guess, at times. But I find they get more bored during the rest of their day, just sitting, just hanging in their stalls. You know, they've got all the forage in the world. They've been fed. They've gotten lunch. They've gotten midday lunch. They've got their things. But I should have stock and jolly balls. I know that, because at any random minute you may get hit by a jolly ball flying out of a stall because these guys are playing with them nonstop. And it's quite comical to watch at times. It's not so fun when they figure out they can stick them in their waterers and push them down and then suck all the water out and fill them up with water. And then they're weighted jolly balls. They're like water balloons that don't ever break. And then when they hit you, they're a little heavier.
I love it. We have one that will nearly play fetch. If I throw the jolly ball into a stall, he'll go get it and he'll bring it back to me. It's pretty nuts. But yeah,
I like them.
Thankful for jolly balls.
That's it.
So yeah. So going back a little bit to workouts or maybe practicing, if you will. So tell us how often, once the horse knows how to set up and do the routine of walking to the judge, trot away, trot around the cone, those kinds of things, how often do you practice setting up the horse and trotting in hand?
That's a good question. You said something that was very interesting. You said once the horse knows to trot to the judge and then around the cone. I think something we need to touch on there is once the handler knows to trot to the judge, walk straight at the judge, They're trying to look at how the horse tracks. Don't try to go around the judge. Walk straight to him, please. It's very
I feel like
difficult
that
when you're.
message was for me.
No, not you. I just in general, I see a lot of people do it. Not amateurs, but all walks of life. Walk to the judge. They know what's about to happen. They will get out of your way. I promise. Um, but trot that teaching a horse to trot, once they've got it figured out, we do it. I don't think there's ever really a routine. If I know one that likes to sometimes not trot real good, we'll work on it from time to time. I don't try to drill it in their head on that in-hand trotting because we trot every single day of our life here at the house. They're trotting next to the mule. They're trotting next to a horse if we're using a pony horse. They're next to us and they're trotting quite a bit around here. Setting up though is a different story. I would like to say that we practice setting up daily, but sometimes that doesn't happen. I think some of your older horses, like your age horses, that have been shown quite a bit, I don't think you really got to mess with it as much. Just set them up every once in a while, do an inspection, make sure you're still on the right track on the program, the fitting program, make sure they're looking good, make sure they're still standing up the way they need to stand up, see if you need to change anything in your program, whether it be workout wise or if we need to start doing some kind of a joint supplement to help them out a little bit right there. But the young horses, as much as if you've got 5 minutes before and after a workout, practice setting them up. There's nothing worse than thinking you got it all done and they're good, and then you get to a big show and it's a train wreck and you're trying to get them set up and you're like, well, I'll just try to hand set them, and then that doesn't look good. And I on a young horse, I'd work on it every day until they've got it like 100% down where you almost can just walk them into it and you don't have to touch them from there.
Yeah, it's good. I appreciate what you said about using the setup process or practicing, the activity that you do in the ring as an opportunity to see how your horse looks. I feel like that's a really good reminder because we look at our horse all the time, but it's a different picture when they're actually set up. In being reminded of the best position for that horse to have its head and neck out, up, down, what have you. That's a good reminder. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, they all halter horses look really good walking around in a stall. They all look good.
Yeah.
You can go to the WCHA for charity and walk through every barn aisle and look at every horse and just say wow at every single one. But until you see them set up in the show pen, then your thoughts might differ on that. So getting them out, setting them up, if you have someone that can take a photo for you, or you have someone you can trust to say, hey, we need to think about putting polka dot on a diet or something, then that's what you need from time to time. I get them out all the time, and Karina will come out and look at them, or Ernesto, our barn manager, he'll help us out on that as well, or he'll set one up and I'll be able to look at it. But it's very crucial to like take a good look at your horse and say, okay, we need to either start pushing a little harder, or we need to push the workouts a little harder, but cut back on the groceries a little bit. And because, man, they all look so good in a stall, but when you get them out and set them up, they can really change from those two places.
Yeah, it's good. Going back a little bit to your workouts, any tips on how to acclimate a horse to the golf cart or the mule or the ATV side by side? Any tips on that?
Take it slow at first. If this horse has never seen a golf cart or a mule or a four-wheeler, definitely take it slow. It's kind of a two-person job at that point. I've taken horses where young horses, babies or yearlings that have never seen one, and I'll walk next to the mule while the mule's running and driving, and I'll just walk next to it, and then I'll get the horse to trot a little bit next to it as it's driving next to it, just so they can feel how it would be if I was actually sitting in it and driving it. And you just kind of just transition, and some horses take to it no problem. They have no issues with it. But we've had some that were a little tougher. I think that an easier transition for them is if you've got a pony horse and then they're just trotting next to another horse. That's no problem for them. And then you transition from that to a mule. But I understand not everybody has a pony horse. But getting them on the golf cart is just take your time, take it slow, don't make a fight of it, because you've got a piece of equipment there that's hard and has edges, and we don't want to put any bumps or bruises on our show ponies. But once they get the hang of it, they're usually pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And it usually doesn't take longer than maybe one or two sessions.
Okay. You mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking about using the setup process, practicing to set up as an opportunity to really evaluate your horse, and how they're looking weight-wise, muscle-wise. So how do you typically adjust your feeding program, even in the midst of a show season? Like you mentioned having to increase or decrease the groceries, like to what extent, and then how quickly do you typically see changes in the body in the direction that you're trying to go? Just tell us a little bit about that.
So the funny thing is, before we got on this phone conversation, I was talking with Ernesto, our barn guy, and we were talking about each individual horse, and we were actually changing feed amounts. And if that's not a weekly thing, it's a bi-weekly thing around here.
Okay.
You can see results pretty quickly if your workouts are consistent. If you're consistent on your 6 days a week, we're working and we're consistently feeding this amount. If you change one of those things, you're going to see a result pretty quickly. So if you change the amount of feed they're getting, so let's just, in general, they're getting 4 scoops of grain a day, total for the day. If you take half a scoop away, you're going to see results. But if you take a full scoop away, you're going to see faster results. But if we just take a half a scoop away and we bump their workouts up, that's going to be more along the lines of taking a full scoop away, because now we're burning more calories than we're intaking less calories. So we're going to see faster results there. I try not to ever let my horses get to a point where I'm having to make humongous changes. So that would be, okay, wow, I don't know what happened here. This horse has put on so much weight. That would put me in the concerned areas. Maybe I need to go take this horse to the vet and see if we have something going on with the thyroid. I try to never let them get there. So I usually have a general idea of what a halter horse for that age and that body type needs for a food amount or a calorie intake. And you can just do small little tweaks from there, trying to get them to bloom at the time you need them to bloom. You need them to look their best at the end of the year, or whatever that person's certain show that they're really trying to succeed at. But feed and conditioning changes daily, weekly around here. But I've looked at, I've had the great opportunity of working with a lot of really good horsemen in this industry, and they change things a lot, because if you get too far outside that line of perfection on, like, this is the perfect feed program, this is the perfect fit program for this horse. Now, every horse is different. Then you're either trying to cut them back or you're trying to play catch up. And we all know catch up is way harder than it is to cut back. It's so much harder to put weight on a horse than it is to take weight off of a horse. So those diets and exercise programs change so much. When I was an assistant, I worked for JT Mitchell, and I would never forget, he'd come in the barn and he'd change a workout on one horse and everybody else would say the same, and he'd change it for 2 weeks. And then he'd change it again 2 weeks later, and then he'd change it again 2 weeks later. And you ask him why. Well, he was looking a little fat that week. And then no, he was looking perfect the next week. And then we needed to fill up because we're getting ready to haul to Iowa. So we're going to bump that down a little bit because they're going to lose a little weight on that trailer ride. And we need to get them hard because we're just going to Fort Worth, and that's only a 45-minute drive. So they're not going to lose much on that. So we need to bump those workouts up and get them looking hard and tight, because we're not going to lose all that fluff on a 15-hour horse ride or a trailer ride. So I think just knowing your horse and what it takes to keep them where they need to be. And that's just going to be looking at the horse and being honest with yourself, like saying, oh, is it enough or is it too much? And that's just going to take time on looking at horses. And if you only have one, it makes it easier, because if you haul one and you say, well, he looked like this at home, but then I get him to the show and 4 days later, boy, he's really leaned out a little bit, then we know, okay, so he's not going to eat real good on the road. He's not going to eat real good at the horse show. He doesn't take the hauling real well. So we might need to think about next time we haul, let's have him a little bit heavier than we really want in that middle area. And then when we get there, we already know he's going to lose a little bit of that.
Sounds like a
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It's very strategic.
It's a lot to think about. Yeah.
And again, it goes back to that. We're showing we're trying to show at the very top of the game, and we're trying to be the best horse that we can be. And where we're at, we're trying to be the best horse in the pen for the world at the World Show that year. We've got to have that horse 100% looking its best. And that may mean that at home he's getting alfalfa, but when we get to a horse show, we give him a bale of Coastal in a stall. So he eats a bunch of that and drinks a bunch of water and kind of fills up a little bit in that middle, because he's not eating anything else. He won't touch his grain with it. So we just have to look at things and say, what's going to keep my horse looking good for the time being until we can get them home, or pre-show even. We can do those things as well to help get them along and get them through that horse show looking their very, very best.
It's good. It's a lot of good information, a lot to think about. You've mentioned hay and grain. Tell us if there are any supplements, feed supplements that you like, or any like coat products or anything that you use in addition to, or don't use for that matter, in addition to hay, grain, and water.
Yeah. Well, we don't get paid by anybody to use any products. I pay for them, just like everybody else, I think. Well, I'm sure there's some people out there that don't have to pay for them. But we feed 100X equine supplements. So we feed the Gut X, we feed the Regen X, the Osteomax, and the Joint X. Now, not every horse gets all of those. We give Gut X to everybody because it's a gut support. So we want to help support their gut and coat that stomach lining and make sure that they're they're not getting any ulcer issues or anything like that from the stresses of showing. The Osteomax is a soft tissue repair. I like that for horses that were really pushing pretty hard, just to make sure that they're getting the recovery that they need from a really hard workout. The Regenex is an amino acid supplement that I really, really am so happy that they came out with, because every horse in a halter program needs amino acids, good quality amino acids that are palatable. All of these are in a gallon jug that you can use a pumper. But the Regenex is one of the only ones that I've found that is safe for HYPP horses, because they pull the potassium out of that for them. So your potassium levels are extremely low. And in most other amino acid supplements, there's a lot of potassium in it. And so that HYPP horse then misses out on that supplement. But with the Regenex from 100X Equine, it's HYPP safe, which I really am thankful for that they've got that. Mm-hmm. So those are pretty much those supplements. Coat supplements or coat things that we use, rose oil, rose conditioner. I'm not really sure what the actual name of it is. I don't think I've ever even read the bottle. I've just looked at the label for the last 20 years. I use that religiously. They get sprayed down with that at least twice a day. Let's see, what other things do we use here? Peppy products for the show pen, your Champion, Peppy Champion spray, make them all shiny. Fly spray, whatever works for that arena. Because sometimes Piranha's not going to work here, and Be Free of Flies is going to work here, or you can just use a mixture of all of it and just put it all on them.
Yeah. I remember that last year, people were talking on social media about what fly spray was going to work at the Congress, the Paint Horse Congress. And I thought, so I literally showed up with 3 different kinds. So I thought, I guess this is a thing. I live in central Illinois and I use this product, but I guess when I go to Oklahoma, the flies might not respond. And it was worth it, honestly, to keep him comfortable, especially in the show ring.
Yeah, for sure. I remember we showed him Bakersfield, California a very long time ago. And I remember seeing somebody using off on their horse. Because I don't remember what the bug was called, but it was a bug that would pinch. And it was pinch you bad enough that it would make you bleed, and they would get all over your horse and start doing that. And they were just coating the horses in off, and it seemed to work really good. I don't know what the effects of that were, but I know that it keeps sand fleas off at the Pinto World.
Nice. Another pro tip. You're full of them.
Another pro tip.
I love it. So shifting gears a little bit, you're a certified massage therapist for horses. What are a few of the most helpful ways for us to know that our horse needs a massage or would benefit from a massage?
Ways to know. I think any horse that's in a work program could use one. And I don't think that you necessarily need to be certified to do it. I'm sure your husband's not a certified masseuse, but you sure would enjoy him rubbing your shoulders. I think that any horse that's in a work program could use some kind of massage. And I'm not trying to discredit like me being certified to do that or anybody being certified to do that. But we've all seen those percussion guns that you can get that, you plug into the wall and they hammer on muscle. Anybody can get one of those things. And if it's muscle, get after it. Anything you can do to help loosen up those muscles and keep those muscles freed up is what is going to really make a difference. I also believe that stretching your horse is really big. We all know that halter horses kind of get a bad rep for their movement and not being as free in their movement as some other disciplines. But we never really look at stretching these guys. So that's kind of how I got into the massage and flexion therapy side of things. Is I wanted to find a way to make my horses one more comfortable and able to get that full range of motion in their gait, so then we can go therefore and have a better workout. If we're short striding every single step going around the track, we're not getting that full range of motion and we're not working that full muscle. So that's kind of how I got into it. I was looking for ways to help them get more range of motion. That way we could get a better workout in and we could hopefully grow off of that and get past those plateaus that we talked about earlier a whole lot easier than being very short strided and not being able to move around and be fluid with our movement.
Good. Given us a lot to think about. I think I'll finish with asking you, what advice do you have for somebody who's considering entering the halter horse world? That's kind of a broad question.
Yeah, I want to make a joke, but I don't. Do it. I would say do it. Do whatever is intriguing to you. Whatever you feel like, man, that looks like a lot of fun. Go do it. Whatever that is, whether it's a halter horse, a reiner, whether it's a horse, it doesn't even have to be a horse. Go do what you feel like is going to make you happy. And have fun. Remember, at the end of the day, it's just a horse show, and whatever the placings turn out to be, I promise you, there's another horse show next weekend somewhere. The placings will be different there. But some advice on getting in. Find someone that you can trust if you don't already own a horse, that you can go around, whether it's a trainer that you hire just to go look at horses, or a friend that's in the halter horse industry that'll go around and look at horses with you. Someone that you can trust that says, okay, I'm looking for your best interest. I don't want you just to waste your money on any old horse. The saying, buy once, cry once. Don't settle for the first pretty horse you run into. There's a whole lot of pretty horses in the halter industry. Look at a lot of them. Try to determine what you want to show. Do you want a mare? Do you want a gelding? Do you want to show a stud horse? Do you want to show a baby, a yearling, a 2-year-old, an aged horse? I would say if you're getting into it, I'd try to find something 2 and older, just because they're probably, and that's been in the show pen, because they're going to be a little bit more seasoned. They're going to know kind of the routine. They've been hauled to horse shows. But I would definitely get some help. That way you have someone that knows what they're looking specifically at and have a budget in mind. Because I think that there's a misconception in the industry that you've got to spend $100,000 to buy something really, really good, and you don't. You've got to find that one for sure, but you can go around and shop and you can find plenty of people that have really nice horses that they'd be willing to part with for a reasonable amount of money that will keep you in the game, and you'd be playing and you'd be having fun for whatever level you want to be at, whether you want to spend $5,000, $20,000, whatever that is. But do your shopping, look around, and don't buy on color. Unless you're trying to buy a paint horse or an Appaloosa, just don't buy on color. Color can be deceiving. It can be deceiving. There's a lot of yellow horses out there, but there's a lot of really good yellow horses out there, but I know a lot of people will say, oh, this is a Palomino, or whatever color it may be. Make sure you're buying the horse for what the horse is. Look at conformation first. Balance, correct bone conformation, correct structure, balance, and pretty. Color should always be the last thing you look at. If the color's there, then that's just a bonus. But if you're wanting to compete, look for balance and structural correctness, and then color after that.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing all that wisdom with us and getting really into the details about workouts and feeding and just a glimpse into your program. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to have been able to share. And if anybody has any questions, you can sure find us on Facebook or in a number of other ways you can find us, I'm sure.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, if you're an amateur or a professional willing to share your story or bring content that helps us with our halter horses, you can email me at fitforhalter@gmail.com.